Hello, welcome to Kitchen Basics 101, where I teach you the bare bone basics as if you've never cooked a day in your life from the perspective of a mom. All right, we did the filet mignon. Now we're gonna do chicken breast. So you've seen me roast a chicken breast and I do that all the time. But today I'm going to try the method that we used for the filet mignon on these nice thick chicken breasts and see if we can get that same great tender effect. Now, obviously, they're gonna need a little more time than the filet mignon needed because we're gonna have to cook them all the way, as opposed to the filet mignon, which we were satisfied to eat at, medium rare temperature, okay? I know I'll get the question, do you have to trim them? No. Everything that came on here is totally edible and you do not have to trim them. It's totally a personal preference. Me personally, I like it pretty trimmed up. I don't want to bite into anything with any extra texture. I want everything to be sort of the same texture. So for me, I like to give them a little bit of a trim, but you do not have to trim any of this off if you do not want to, okay? It's all safe to eat. It's all perfectly fine. It just might be a little chewy when you get to it. And that's okay too. There are plenty of people who not only don't mind that texture, but like that texture. It's just not me. So it's your kitchen, you decide that for yourself. Focused on here is method over seasoning. Now I'm going to season them, but that's not really gonna be the difference maker here. It's the method that we're going to use to cook them that's gonna be the difference maker here. So if you like different flavor profile, then by all means, season them differently. Now you see me drying the meat. I did this also when we did the filet mignon, and a lot of people were like, why are you drying it if you're gonna put oil on it? Well, water and oil are not the same thing, right? Water is going to evaporate and create steam, and steam is not going to give us a good sear, and we wanna sear our breasts. As opposed to oil, which is gonna facilitate a great sear, and it's actually gonna help us get a great sear, okay? So we're gonna pat them dry. Between every step, you should be washing your hands. I wash my hands because I touched the chicken. Now I'm touching the oil. I'm gonna put a little bit of, I'm using grapeseed oil. Feel free to use avocado oil, whatever oil makes you happy. I use this because it's a high heat oil. I also love Graza olive oil, but in this situation, this is high heat. I don't wanna use that because it's going to burn, okay? Salt and pepper. Salt is an absolute must. You have to use salt. You probably have to use pepper. All the other seasonings are going to be optional, okay? You can use whatever seasonings you like. Be really generous, though. I think when you're a new chef, you are afraid that you're putting too much salt, and that's very rarely going to be the case. I mean, you definitely can put too much salt, but on a protein like this, very unlikely. It's different if you're making a sauce or something that's going to soak up and condense that salt flavor. Smoked paprika. This is just like red peppers, but I loved that smoky element, so I love using smoked paprika. Delicious. Plus, it's going to give us beautiful color on these, which is never a bad thing. And then I'm using a little bit of flaky garlic, so it's just like a little bit bigger, like chunks of garlic. You could totally just use garlic powder here. This is just something I have, so I want to use it up. So I'm going to generously season with garlic as well. I'm going to flip it over and do the same on the other side without touching the chicken, because you're touching your seasonings and you don't want to get chicken guts on the outsides of your seasonings, okay? So I haven't touched the chicken. Flip them over. I'm going to use a fork. So again, not touching the chicken. Flip it over. This is also going to press all those spices that I just put on into those chicken pieces. And we're going to do it on the other side. Salt. Generous amount of salt. Proteins love to be seasoned, okay? Pepper. Beautiful. By the way, I have my oven preheating to 400 degrees while I'm doing this, and I let my chicken sit out just for 5-10 minutes, just so it's not icy cold. Room temperature chicken is probably way too scary. Let's not do that. Chicken's a little more temperamental than meat. But let's leave it out and just so it's not freezing cold when we put it in the pan, right? All this time it's sitting here while I'm seasoning it. It's warming up a little bit, so it's not so cold. We're about to get our hands dirty because I think this is a really critical step. I'm just gonna give a little massage of all the oil and seasonings and everything all over the meat, into all the little nooks and crannies, just to make sure everything is really beautifully seasoned, okay? So you're gonna lose a little bit of seasoning to your hands, but that's okay. We seasoned really generously. Look at how like gorgeously seasoned that looks, right? Plus we're making sure that every little bit has oil on it, which will help us get great browning. And we're picking up the pieces that fell off. All right, now we definitely have to go give our hands a really good wash with some dish soap and some hot water. This pan is cast iron with enamel over top. You can use any cast iron or you could use stainless steel. Anything that you can put in the oven afterwards. And we preheated the pan for a good solid minute before, and I'm putting them away from myself, the chicken breasts, okay, into this pan. We're not going to move them around. We're going to let them sit for 4 minutes and develop a beautiful crust on one side. I've got my vent fan on and I have my temperature set at like medium high on my large burner. So this pan is very hot. We're getting a nice crispy sear on one side, which is going to help just seal in all those beautiful juices, because that's what we're looking for, is a tender, juicy piece of chicken. Okay, now we're going to turn the chicken over, right? Oh, look at that gorgeous crust. I'm gonna move it just ever so slightly from the spot that it was in, just like we did with the steaks. I'm gonna add a knob of cold butter into the pan. Then I'm gonna put this in a 400-degree oven for like somewhere between 11, 12 minutes. We'll check the temperature. We're looking for like a 160 temperature. We're gonna put this whole thing in our oven. Look at this stunningness straight out of the oven. Incredible. I pulled them out. I checked the center after 12 minutes. I'm at 165, which is exactly what I want. I'm going to put these onto a plate just to rest for a minute. We want those juices to pull back in, right? So it's important to you're not going to rest as long as the steak, but you're going to rest for a couple minutes. If you want it to stay good and hot, because I saw a lot of people concerned about that with the steak, use tin foil or use a heavy lid. I'm going to use the lid to my pan. I'm just going to put it on top of the plate, and I'm just going to let it rest for like 5 minutes before I cut into it, just to make sure that everything is pulled back in. And we're at the most important part. Look at this looks incredible. Like look at how much juice there is at the bottom of this pan. I'm gonna pour that into my pan sauce that I'm gonna make afterwards. Let's give it a try here on the end where it's gonna be the most dry, and see if we've achieved deliciousness. Flavor's there. Let's cut it down the middle. See how we are on the juiciness factor. Oh, it's hot still. It's dripping. That's a good sign. It's incredibly juicy. Oh, it's really hot though. Tender hands. Let's see if I can pull apart. So juicy, so tender, so flavorful. 10 out of 10 recommend. Love this method for chicken. This is gonna be so good. I'm gonna put a little pan sauce on it. I did 12 minutes. I might do 11 next time, because I think it could be just a little under. Like, chicken's one of those things, right? People are really worried about temperature. I took it to 165. I might take it to 160 for myself, but it is super juicy, super tender, super delicious.